with calmness, and then said, "You know, Verney, my fixed determination not to quit this place until in the light of day Stamboul is confessedly ours. If the men I have about me shrink from following me, others more courageous are to be found. Go you before break of day, bear these dispatches to Caraza, add to them your own entreaties that he send me his marines and naval force. If I can get but one regiment to second me, the rest would follow, of course. Let him send me this regiment. I shall expect your return by tomorrow noon." Methought this was but a poor expedient, but I assured him of my obedience and zeal. I quitted him to take a few hours' rest. With the breaking of morning I was accoutrements for my ride. I lingered a while, desirous of taking leave of Perdita, and from my window observed the approach of the sun. The golden splendor arose, and weary nature awoke to suffer yet another day of heat and thirsty decay. No flowers lifted up their dew-laden cups to meet the dawn. The dry grass had withered on the plains. The burning fields of air were vacant of birds. The cicale alone, children of the sun, began their shrill and deafening song among the cypresses and olives. I saw Raymond's coal-black charger brought to the palace gate. A small company of officers arrived soon after. Care and fear was painted on each cheek and in each eye, unrefreshed by sleep. I found Raymond and Perdita together. He was watching the rising sun, while with one arm he encircled his beloved's waist. She looked on him, the son of her life, with earnest gaze of mingled anxiety and tenderness. Raymond started angrily when he saw me. "Here still?" he cried. "Is this your promised zeal?" "Pardon me," I said, "but even as you speak I am gone." "Nay, pardon me," he replied, "I have no right to command or reproach, but my life hangs on your departure and speedy return. Farewell." His voice had recovered its bland tone, but a dark cloud still hung on his features. I would have delayed. I wished to recommend watchfulness to Perdita, but his presence restrained me. I had no pretence for my hesitation, and on his repeating his farewell, I clasped his outstretched hand. It was cold and clammy. "Take care of yourself, my dear lord," I said. "Nay," said Perdita, "that task shall be mine. Return speedily, Lionel." With an air of absence he was playing with her auburn locks, while she leaned on him. Twice I turned back again on this matchless pair. At last, with slow and heavy steps, I had paced out of the hall, and sprung upon my horse. At that moment Clara flew toward me. Clasping my knee, she cried, "Make haste back, uncle. Dear uncle, I have such fearful dreams. I dare not tell my mother. Do not be long away." I assured her of my impatience to return, and then, with a small escort, rode along the plain toward the tower of Marmora. I fulfilled my commission. I saw Caraza. He was somewhat surprised. He would see, he said, what could be done, but it required time, and Raymond had ordered me to return by noon. It was impossible to effect anything in so short a time. I must stay till the next day, or come back, after having reported the present state of things to the general. My choice was easily made. A restlessness, a fear of what was about to betide, a doubt as to Raymond's purposes, urged me to return without delay to his quarters. Quitting the Seven Towers, I rode eastward toward the Sweet Waters. I took circuitous path, principally for the sake of going to the top of the mount before mentioned, which commanded a view of the city. I had my glass with me. The city basked under the noonday sun, and the venerable walls formed its picturesque boundary. Immediately before me was the top of Capoue, the gate near which Mahomet had made the breach by which he entered the city. Trees, gigantic and aged, grew near. Before the gate I discerned a crowd of moving human figures. With intense curiosity I lifted my glass to my eye. I saw Lord Raymond on his charger. A small company of officers had gathered about him, and behind was a promiscuous course of soldiers and subalterns, their discipline lost, their arms thrown aside. No music sounded, no banners streamed. The only flag among them was the one Raymond carried. He pointed with it to the gate of the city. The circle round him fell back. With angry gestures he leapt from his horse, and seizing a hatchet that hung from his saddle bow, went with the apparent intention of battering down the opposing gate. A few men came to aid him. Their numbers increased. Under their united blows, the obstacle was vanquished. Gate, portcullis, and fence were demolished, and the wide sunlit way, leading to the heart of the city, now lay open before them. The men shrank back. They seemed afraid of what they had already done, and stood as if they expected some mighty phantom to stalk in offended majesty from the opening. Raymond sprung lightly to his horse, grasped the standard, and with words which I could not hear, but his gestures, being their fit accompaniment, were marked by passionate energy. He seemed to adjure their assistance and companionship. Even as he spoke, the crowd receded from him. Indignation now transported him. His words, I guessed, were fraught with disdain. Then, turning from his coward followers, he addressed himself to enter the city alone. His very horse seemed to back from the fatal entrance. His dog, his faithful dog, lay moaning and supplicating in his path. In a moment more he had plunged the rowels into the side of the stunning animal, who bounded forward, and he, the gateway passed, was galloping up the broad and desert street. Until this moment, my soul had been in my eyes only. I had gazed with wonder, mixed with fear and enthusiasm. The latter feeling now predominated. I forgot the distance between us. "I will go with these, Raymond," I cried, but my eye, removed from the glass, I could scarce discern the pygmy forms of the crowd, which about a mile from me surrounded the gate. The form of Raymond was lost. Stung with impatience, I urged my horse with force of spur and loosened reins down the acclivity, that, before danger could arrive, I might be at the side of my noble, godlike friend. A number of buildings and trees intervened when I had reached the plain, hiding the city from my view. But at that moment a crash was heard. Thunder-like, it reverberated through the sky, while the air was darkened. A moment more, and the old walls again met my sight, while over them hovered a murky cloud. Fragments of buildings rolled above, half seen in the smoke, while flames burst out beneath, and continued explosions filled the air with terrific thunders. Flying from the mass of falling ruin, which leapt over the high walls and shook the ivy towers, a crowd of soldiers made for the road by which I came. I was surrounded, hemmed in by them, unable to get forward. My impatience rose to its utmost. I stretched out my hands to the men. I conjured them to turn back and save their general, the conqueror of Stamboul, the liberator of Greece. Tears, tears, in warm flow, gushed from my eyes. I would not believe in his destruction, yet every mass that darkened the air seemed to bear with it a portion of the martyred Raymond. Horrible sights were shaped to me in the turbid cloud that hovered over the city, and my own relief was derived from the struggles I made to approach the gate. Yet, when I effected my purpose, all I could discern with the precincts of the massive walls was a city of fire. The open way through which Raymond had ridden was enveloped in smoke and flame. After an interval the explosions ceased, but the flames still shot up from various quarters. The dome of St. Sophia had disappeared. Strange to say, the result perhaps of the concussion of air occasioned by the blowing up city. Huge white thunder clouds lifted themselves up from the southern horizon and gathered overhead. They were the first blots on the blue expanse that I had seen for months, and amid this havoc and despair they inspired pleasure. The vault above became obscured. Lightning flashed from the heavy masses, followed instantaneously by crashing thunder. Then the big rain fell. The flames of the city bent beneath it, and the smoke and dust arising from the ruins was dissipated. I no sooner perceived an abatement of the flames than, hurried on by an irresistible impulse, I endeavored to penetrate the town. I could only do this on foot, as the mass of ruin was impracticable for a horse. I had never entered the city before, and its ways were unknown to me. The streets were blocked up, the ruins smoking. I climbed up one heap, only to view others in suspicion, and nothing told me where the center of the town might be, or toward what point Raymond might have directed his course. The rain ceased. The clouds sunk behind the horizon. It was now evening, and the sun descended swiftly the western sky. I scrambled on until I came to a street whose wooden houses, half burnt, had been cooled by the rain, and were fortunately uninjured by the gunpowder. Up this I hurried, until now I had not seen a vestige of man. Yet none of the defaced human forms which I distinguished could be Raymond, so I turned my eyes away, while my heart sickened within me. I came to an open space, a mountain of ruin in the midst. I announced that some large mosque had occupied the space, and here, scattered about, I saw various articles of luxury and wealth, singed, destroyed, but shewing what they had been in their ruin: jewels, strings of pearls, embroidered robes, rich furs, glittering tapestries,